Welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop May 2021 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? I'm Mark Cashman, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft 365 marketing team, here to help you set that ongoing record straight. This month, I talk with Yogesh Ratnaparkhi, one of our lead program managers focused on the tooling and processes to make it easier to migrate content into Microsoft 365. You'll hear more about the broader set of tools for migrating from on-premises SharePoint, file servers, and moving content from a multitude of cloud providers. In essence, much of the work that we've done to integrate the mover technology since we acquired. Beyond the breadth of migration innovations, we'll focus on what landed this month. We'll add in a few related items and always the fun teasers of what to look forward to next month. This podcast is your 30 minutes to kick back and get informed. The goal being to stay ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. Okay, it's time to migrate our way into all the tech that rolled out in May 2021. First, we'll start with employee engagement, those activities that you take and bring far and wide across your intranet for that broad one-to-one or bidirectional engagement, which leads into a lot of what you do, which is conversations. From a Yammer perspective, we've brought in new Yammer conversation insights. This is analytics and data, and we know that's key to understanding the overall engagement impact. Over the last few months, we've shipped new ways to measure activity happening in Yammer across communities, knowledge, and live events. Collectively, these insights empower authors and community managers to measure the reach of their conversations and announcements, to understand how the content resonates best, and of course, very important often to see what doesn't. As you analyze these insights, you'll see discussion impressions and engagement a lot more clearly. You'll recognize trends, and you'll see how people react specifically and, of course, over time. Conversation Insights is available on Yammer.com on the web and through the Yammer Communities app in Microsoft Teams. Post, measure, course correct, post, and measure again. The results will guide you to improving the how for the what that lands to your intended audiences, with the intent of improving the overall impact of your conversations. People will now have the option to open Word documents and text files directly into the Immersive Reader experience, directly from OneDrive and SharePoint libraries. It is a wonderful reading experience, especially when you get rid of all the clutter, and most specifically, from an accessibility perspective, it makes it a lot easier for screen readers to help and guide through those documents. Next, I want to touch on those new capabilities I mentioned with the conversation we'll have with Yogesh to take it even further, and that's that focus of migrating content from Dropbox and Google Workspace into Microsoft 365. Just as we released similar capabilities for Box content into Microsoft 365 over the last few months, this release enables you to migrate your Dropbox and Google Workspace folders and files into OneDrive, into SharePoint, and into Teams across Microsoft 365, so you can collaborate all in one place with feature gains, productivity enhancements, and a more centralized governance and compliance approach. Now, as an admin, you can connect to a Dropbox or Google Workspace account, and the service begins to discover those users and their files. The service will automatically map to an individual's OneDrive account or multiple OneDrive accounts, and you can manually map to specific OneDrive accounts, SharePoint sites, or a Teams channel as you design and configure your preferred end state. Another way to think about this is you decide where and how you want content to land, especially if you're also working to establish an updated information architecture plan. There is no better time to do this than during a migration. The outcome puts you one step closer to a modern workplace that works for you, your peers, and the collective content that is core to your business. One note, to use these migration capabilities, you must be a global admin or a OneDrive SharePoint admin in Microsoft 365 where you want to migrate your content to. Let's turn now to chat with Yogesh Ratnaparkhi about all things migration and movement of content into Microsoft 365. So let's take time and welcome Yogesh Ratnaparkhi to the show. Yogesh, welcome to the Intrazone.
Hey, Mark.
Yogesh, can you tell us exactly what you do here at Microsoft?
I am a program manager on the migration team for OneDrive and SharePoint, as you mentioned. So I own the Migration Manager platform, which lets customers get their content into Microsoft 365, including OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams.
And when you say the Migration Manager platform, that is a part of the SharePoint Online Admin Center. So there's a lot of work happening in the SharePoint Admin Center, and I know you and the broader admin team have been pretty busy. In fact, there's a couple of other features that we've talked about already. But as we hone into migration, one of the things that I think is foundational to a lot of the ways that we're extending how people can move content into Microsoft 365 is based on our previous acquisition of the Mover team. Can you tell us a little bit about that acquisition and what it meant for you in this current state of the Migration Manager?
Absolutely, Mark. Our first-party tool focused a lot on getting the on-prem content, which includes the SharePoint servers and the file shares into Microsoft 365. But we saw the opportunity for customers to get their cloud compute content like Google and Dropbox and Box. So Mover really excelled in that particular scenario. So since the acquisition in 2019, we have been integrating their technology into the Migration Manager experience, which is hosted in SharePoint Admin Center, as you mentioned, so that customer can have a first-class experience within the admin center where they're used to going and doing all things admin for SharePoint and OneDrive.
So our portfolio means if you have content on premises, SharePoint or file servers, if you're coming from cloud to cloud, with a lot of the technology that you're bringing from Mover, but really updating this month and have previously with another cloud provider, it's the value of bringing from cloud to cloud. You know, if you think about why are we doing this through the lens of a customer's perspective, what do you think is the biggest value to them that Microsoft is offering this through our admin center?
Yeah, so as you said, Mark, we want to give a comprehensive migration experience to our customers. And with the Migration Manager already offering the file share migrations, we wanted to expand that. And many of our customers, in addition to getting their content from file shares, they often have content in Google Workspace or Dropbox or Box through either mergers and acquisition or that being their incumbent cloud storage provider. So we want to make sure that in addition to getting their on-prem content, they can also do the cloud-to-cloud content with the same consistent experience that we have been offering so far.
You, by nature of being on the OneDrive and SharePoint team, represent the where people want to put their content in the cloud for great compliance, for great co-authoring and access to that content, and just a consolidation, especially if they're really spread out across multiple providers with a lot of different policies that may or may not be able to be applied to that content, mostly from a security or a privacy perspective. But as you're, adding more options or more migration tools to our toolkit that we offer obviously through to our customers, what's happening this month? If we think about either very timely for May and even just recently in April, when we think of cloud to cloud, now when somebody goes to the SharePoint Admin Center and they click on the Migration Manager tab, what do they see? And if you can just really highlight like what's rolling out just freshly.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of May, we rolled out the Google migration scenarios in the Migration Manager. So in addition to file share scenarios, now you have a tile to connect to your Google Workspace account and discover and get all the content into Microsoft 365. Earlier in April, we launched Box. So Box is another significant cloud storage providers that our customers get their content from. And building on that momentum, we are also rolling out Dropbox as we speak. So early next month, customers will start seeing another tile for Dropbox so that they can get the content from Dropbox as well.
So maybe we can also walk through, and I think if we phrase it around no cloud left behind, all clouds lead to Microsoft 365, at least from our migration paths. What would be the actual, I log into the SharePoint Admin Center, and then I do what? And it doesn't have to be an exhaustive how-to, but just to give people a sense of what mover capabilities we've now brought in, but how an admin actually goes to bring in content from Dropbox or Google Workspace, whichever example is easiest to highlight how it actually works.
Absolutely. So once the admin visits the admin center, SharePoint admin center, they have a tab for migration. And there on the landing page, they can pick and choose the scenario they want to migrate from. So let's say I want to get my content from Google Workspace. They click on the Google tile, and on the next screen, they get to connect to Google. This is a simple authorization experience, fairly common when you are connecting to an external source. And as soon as the connection is established, we will automatically get all the Google Drives and their content. So the admin has the option to now review all the users and drives they will be migrating, and they can scan it. And as soon as the scan is complete, they can start migrating this content. And the nice thing is all of this is centrally available. So reporting and all the troubleshooting can be done from a single interface.
And that's, I think, the brilliance of what your team is doing. It started off as a migration manager, an extension of what people were doing to bring file shares at scale into Microsoft 365, but turning it into a central location for people to migrate X from Y, Z, so many options. And obviously cloud to cloud is a very important one, especially when people are seeing the full value of what they have available to them in Microsoft 365. It may be that it's just now time to move content that was somewhere else, because now they're taking advantage of OneDrive for the first time, or they're moving more into Teams and they can do those actions pretty directly. But it's a true cloud-to-cloud migration. It is a step within the SharePoint Admin Center, approve and get signed in to the where they're moving from, and then it's just a move of content, cloud to cloud. Correct?
Exactly, Mark. And whether it's cloud or whether you're getting content from on-prem, the experience is similar. So we want to make the experience for customer as consistent as possible so that they don't have to relearn what they did for, say, on-prem. So knowing if they were familiar with doing file share migrations, now the cloud migrations are going to be extremely familiar, and it's going to be self-serve for them from the get-go.
So if the different options that are coming in and are starting to light up, there's also the work to unify the experience as much as we can. If that's the work that's going on now, and we've got, of course, the SharePoint migration tool, Migration Manager growing and evolving, what can people think of what's coming next for Microsoft for migration, whether it's more cloud to cloud or other things that you're doing to make it a more seamless experience or additional capabilities?
Yeah, as soon as we launch the Dropbox scenario, we want to make sure we focus on fit and finish. And then right after, we're planning to launch the Ignite, which is another significant cloud storage provider that we want to enable with the same experience that we did for the first 3 cloud storage providers. And then we want to continue helping customers scale their migrations, whether it's through scheduling or whether through discovering their content more easily so they can make those insights actionable and quickly jumpstart their migrations.
And that really solidly is in the planning phases of any customer that's thinking about moving. There's a lot to review. There's a lot of tools that can help with that. And when it comes to the actual move of content, that's been our initial focus. But reaching back into that earlier phase of planning, like you said, to schedule, to discover content, I think that's a big question I hear in a lot of customers' conversations. What do we have and what do we want to keep? And then when it comes to the movement of content, that's sort of step number 2. So one point of clarity, when you mentioned Ignite as one of the next cloud providers that we're working on bringing content from, because I got a little confused when I first heard it, I want to also be clear for our audience, it's not our conference Ignite, that's IGNITE. This is a cloud provider, and they spell, the company is spelled EGNYTE. So point of clarity, only because we have a big conference that a lot of people are aware of. So Yogesh, thank you for your time on the show. More importantly, thank you for everything that you and your team do to help people migrate confidently and efficiently from wherever, so many sources, with the destination being Microsoft 365, specifically OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
It was a pleasure talking about migrations, Mark. The team is really excited and passionate about helping customers move their content with as much ease as possible. And we are here to support anyone who is who is trying to migrate their content. So thank you.
It's really great to be able to hear all of the things that our program managers, basically our engineering team, does behind the scenes to design, plan, develop, and then, of course, the most important thing for the Roadmap Pit Stop, to deploy the technology. So I hope you're enjoying all of the migration technology if you're moving content into Microsoft 365. And again, if you're like me, I always benefit from hearing from our PMs. The next thing I want to highlight before we get into the teamwork side of the Roadmap Pit Stop are a couple of events that literally are right around the corner. I want to spotlight 2 of the June 2021 events. The first one, depending on when you're listening to it, is literally right now. It's going on right now. And we've been advertising this for a little bit, but I want to highlight it because there's a number of things that we're doing to get involved, and it's a wonderful event to support. It's the European SharePoint Conference 2021. This is a full virtual event, and it takes place between June 1st and June 2nd. Jeff Teeper, our CVP of Engineering of all things OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, is having a keynote, and he'll be joining in live. And we, of course, have numerous other sessions from Microsoft employees and some of my peers, and a lot of the wonderful MVP and community members. There's a lot of great sessions across the entire event, including some pre-event workshops, which in the context of this podcast might be a little late about hearing about them, but there's always a plethora of content, and sometimes the content is important, but what's really important is knowing who to turn to if you have questions. So this opens up a floodgate of subject matter experts. Now, the other event is coming just the week later. It's the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference, and this is a hybrid event. It's the first one that I've really come in contact with in the context of talking about and being a part of events. So a hybrid event means that it's both online, so if you're an attendee, you can stay at home, you can log in from wherever you're working, or if you're wanting to fly to Orlando or you're in the Orlando, Florida area, they'll be simultaneously connecting with attendees in a hybrid perspective. From Microsoft, we have 3 Microsoft keynotes at this event, one from Dan Holm, another from Caruana Gatumu, and the last one from Charles Lamanna, covering a bunch of information from Microsoft 365, Azure, and Power Platform. And then off of those keynotes, of course, there are a ton of sessions with a lot of great content. I've got 2 sessions that I'll be running. I'll be doing them virtually, but connecting in a hybrid fashion. So I hope if you want to hear from me, and of course, a ton of peers from across the community in a hybrid fashion, definitely join in Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference focused on Orlando, Florida. Now, I said that there were 2 events to spotlight, but I'm going to end on one last shout out of a bonus event, and that is a shout out to the Summer Share Camp 2021 and the team behind it, led by Henning, Andre, Tobias, and Andrej. So from here in the U.S. across the pond, I hope you have a great Share Camp, and if you will, save me a few marshmallows, and if there are any scary campfire stories, please record them and get them to me. I love that nice scare at the end of the day with a nice smoky environment. All right, so that is it with the spotlight on a few events that are near and dear to our timeline of this month of May into June. Next up, let's talk about teamwork, collaborating with one-to-one, one-to-few, working with your team and getting things done. The first item, Microsoft Lists now has an export list to CSV feature. This is one of those features you might have always thought was there, and you would be half right in thinking that. Lists has always had and maintained nice integration with Excel to either bring table data in or to export to analyze your list data back in Excel. The limiting factor, where you find the other half of the truth, is the different experience you'd have if you were on a Mac, which was, to put it bluntly, not an option. On Windows machines, the Export to Excel button has been changed to simply say Export, now with 2 options underneath. Excel Workbooks, which is the export feature that's always been there, and CSV, which is the new feature that brings the ability to export closer to a native format in Excel, moving beyond that temporary .iqy file format. Now on Macs, you can only export to CSV, meaning that people accessing lists on Mac can actually now complete that flow of being able to bring list data into Excel for analysis. One note, even though Lists powers the rows and columns of SharePoint document libraries, this new export to CSV is currently only supported inside Lists. The team is aware of this design issue and they are working on it. Next up, we have an updated sharing experience for Microsoft Lists. Since Microsoft Lists launched, you've been able to share both lists and list items, the latter being a powerful feature to share discrete portions of a list in a way that it was targeted to your recipient. And we really started with the basics of sharing, that notion of granting access. With this update, users can now share entire lists using sharing links with more granular control options, leveraging the same sharing capabilities you might be familiar with when sharing files and folders, which brings to lists the ability to share with everyone, only to certain people, view and edit, and the ability to set sharing expiration. Note, the same admin controls that manage sharing for files and folders will also apply to lists and list items. So share away, I say. That is the basis of the platform, to share your point. And now share your list with a new updated experience and a lot of great options. So if we take on that admin note, the last feature that I wanted to talk about, which is also related to lists, is we've got a new management setting for comments on lists that gives you the ability to turn on or off those comments. So with any user who manages a list or has list management permissions on their list, they'll be able to access this setting in the advanced settings. Admins can already turn on or off comments for the entire organization in the admin center. For admins, this new setting allows a finer-grained control for organizations that want to disallow commenting on specific lists, but maybe not on all lists. If an admin had previously turned off commenting for the entire organization, I hope that you can take that step to now turn commenting back on for the whole of the organization, and then discreetly turn it off for those lists where you don't want to track or manage comments. If you like this feature, leave me a comment on the blog. I've always got comments turned on for the Roadmap Pitstop in the tech community. Next up is recommended files in Office. This applies to Excel, Word, and PowerPoint in Microsoft 365. Microsoft Office displays a list of recommended files on the File tab or Start page of Word, Excel, or PowerPoint on Windows. This list allows you to keep track of work around you and quickly access files with activity you value most, such as edits, mentions, comments by those people that you interact with. Behind the scenes, machine learning predicts which files you're most likely to want to work on next and presents those as a set of cards you can choose from. The Interzone Intelligent Intranet relevant part of this feature: only files that you have access to in OneDrive or SharePoint will be suggested to you. Recommended files in Office has been available on Office.com and Office for Mac, and is now coming to Office on Windows. One note, this feature is starting and being made available on Windows to Office insiders on business or enterprise subscriptions, and then will release more broadly in the coming months. I want to end teamwork on an admin note, one that you'll not need to think about anymore. May 2021 brought the public preview of OneDrive Sync admin reports. These reports, and I know you're still cheering because in my head I'm still cheering, I know this one's been asked for a lot. These reports provide visibility into who in your organization is running OneDrive Sync and any errors they might be experiencing. OneDrive Sync is like electricity. People tend to take it for granted until they have a problem and they're in the middle of an important project. Lights out is bad for business. This is even more the case now with so many people working from home and relying on cloud capabilities like OneDrive and SharePoint. Having insights into what's happened with OneDrive Sync across your organization gives you the tools to educate people, to resolve common issues, and improve experience for the user and help increase and maintain that OneDrive adoption that you've worked hard towards to maintain the value of your OneDrive investment. I also want to note, if you are listening to this and you haven't looked at the blog, definitely check out this feature in the blog because there's a really nice short video from the Office Insider's Amesh Mansukhani, and he's from the Office engineering team, and he walks through this feature in about 5 to 7 minutes very clearly, and it's one of those things, especially if you're not an admin, this is something that you can see plain as day in his video, but you might not have access to. So definitely check out the blog for that one. Moving on to related technology. Build 2021, the event, opened a floodgate for what's to come for developers. So much that I thought I would dedicate the entire related tech section to review some of the highlights from across Microsoft. There were a ton of announcements, that's a given, and a ton of those announcements were related to Microsoft 365 as a platform. So I will have a link in the blog to a summary of news, but I want to cover some of the highlights. For Microsoft Graph, they announced the B2C or business to consumer, business to client access. They announced the SharePoint Framework version 1.13 and the new Signals API. For Fluid Framework, they announced Azure Fluid Relay. There is now going to be a Fluid Framework library for Microsoft 365, and the private preview of Fluid components in Teams kicks off. So if you've heard anything about the Fluid Framework, one of those high-value key scenarios is being able to take content and paste it into a Teams chat and have it still be active content. So if that interests you, get on it. Viva Connections now has extensibility that's entering private preview. So there's a lot of new capabilities now at the fingertips for development. If you're thinking about deploying Viva Connections in a more custom fashion, that one's for you. We also introduced an enhanced Microsoft Teams toolkit in preview with native SharePoint framework integration by default. One other thing that they announced was apps for Microsoft Edge, most notably WebView 2, which if I squint at it, and I hope I get this right from a non-developer person reviewing people's tweets and all the noise about it, it means that the progressive web apps are getting a nice boost, especially knowing the direction that we're going with Project Nucleus to make lists offline. So PWAs for the win. And my non-direct to my work, but lies within sight of my want list, building apps that support dual screen experiences on Surface Duo. I am personally excited to see how this device and category evolves, and we know platforms and devices don't evolve without devs. So if you're inkling of thinking about Surface Duo as a design element for your next app, or you just want to know how it gets done, I think there's a lot of information coming in that direction. And like I said, there's a ton more. If you ask, do devs dream of electric sheep? Deckard and the Build 2021 news crew would say yes. So I say dream away. There's a lot of reality on its way. Wake up. Time to code. On to the teasers. Close your eyes and visualize the near future. Here are 2 teasers for what's coming in June 2021. Teaser number 1, Power Apps can now display images from Microsoft lists. More power to solution builders. Teaser number 2, the SharePoint Admin Center's homepage is getting an update. An insights dashboard filled with metric-rich cards that you can configure and, of course, glean a lot of insight into what's going on in SharePoint. And that's it. That's it with this month's Lucid Foresight on the teasers. We'll share more details and other updates within the hindsightedness of the full SharePoint Roadmap Pitstop June 2021 edition next month. We've added learn more links per feature, plus a list of important resources in the show notes and in the corresponding blog post on the Microsoft Tech Community, published to the SharePoint Tech Community blog. I hope you've enjoyed the Roadmap Pit Stop. Time to relax knowing you're all cut up from this marvelous month of May. If anything still leaves you scratching your head, open questions or concerns, please send us your thoughts and comments to theinterzone@microsoft.com. We're here to put our and your best change management foot forward. Thank you for taking that step with us month after month. Until June, may the roadmap be with you always.